Hello, my wonderful friends. It's time once more for a story. This is from Reddit user PrestigiousFinger86. That's an interesting name. This is the ongoing saga of a certain kind of storm sibling, aka we're in our 30s, get over it. I can't say certain words within the first minute, you guys, I'm sorry. Let's get into the story then, shall we? Hello, Moonhorse. Hello. And the Celestial Herd. I've been a lurker and decided to take the leap in posting my own dumpster fire that is my relationship with my sibling that just makes me go, what the heck is up with this woman? A little background. I, 33-year-old female, and my sister, 35-year-old female, have never really been close, but of trying to look back on our childhood with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, I could say neither of us were more bratty than the other when it came to normal little kid stuff. At least when the adults were around. Since I can remember, she seemed to have it in for me, and since she was the oldest, I was to listen to her when our parents weren't around, in the fine old tradition. Some things that were gotten up to included assigning me the chores that she didn't want to do, anything gross or heavy to lift, and telling me how to do them. I was also the one to do any fetch and carry stuff like putting dishes we've used back, picking up toys, and changing any videos we may have watched. Pushing me on the couch, putting a pillow over my head and sitting on it, and any and all toys we had were subject to the most rigorous negotiations and contracts. Whose was whose, hers, and when I, could play with them, and how and when. And if I had something that she felt was unfair that I did, she usually broke it. Jeez. In other words, she was the princess, and I was to be grateful to serve her. Being a young child, I responded in kind to everything, and we were nearly constantly in trouble for fighting. Sister would often get a dressing down about being too bossy, and my dad, being the gold standard of classic taciturn Midwest father, was for letting us work it out ourselves without too much intervention, and my mother certainly didn't help the situation. Now I'm pretty sure this is where the resentment comes from, and, you guessed it, it's the classic case of sister thought I was the favorite because I was the youngest. My mother did indeed try to helicopter and coddle me to death, and I hated it and pulled away at every opportunity, leaving my sister with Mom since they both liked the same things. I was a hyperactive tomboy that loved being outside, being dirty, and didn't want to sit and snuggle and would avoid anything overly girly like it was a manure fire. Which I, of course, thought it was, hence why I was closer to my dad. Jump forward a few years, my parents have a really messy divorce. We have a stepmother, our own mother becomes eccentric and neither of us can really connect to her, and my sister continues to cry that I'm the favorite. I helped my dad on the farm and had an interest in it. Sister preferred staying indoors. Spending time together because we have similar interests is apparently what counts as favoritism. This is where the shitstorm starts for our adult life. My sister has to make sure that everyone we are near knows how much better, smarter, and above all, prettier she is than me. Our mom was a body shamer that never weighed more than 100 pounds, but that complex is a different story. Oh jeez, it's horrible. Her usual MO was to say how immature I was and how my taste and appearance was like dead fish and that she had been left back a lot in the middle of July for a forensic class experiment compared to her. She would then proceed to steal my clothes to wear. I had a goth/vampire phase in high school and bought a lot of red velvet. Cringe. This applied to anything else in life, what books, TV shows, and other interests I might have had, criticize, and then steal. I think everybody's had at least a little bit of a goth phase. I know I did. Time marches on, and I go through my college experience, which sucked, and I end up in a trade union making a good living, so happy ending there anyway. I see my sister occasionally during breaks, and things mostly stay the same, but I keep my distance. There is one story I will go into, as it's kind of relevant later. It's January, we're both in college, but home for the holidays. Dad is away at a farming conference, and I have moved back to my dorm. In the middle of the night, my sister calls saying the animals have gotten out of their pen. Apparently, the neighbor called her while she was off work and said that they had gotten loose. She couldn't get off work, and now she can't find them. I drive an hour back to Dad's place to discover that the animals are indeed penned up, just in a different spot. Our neighbor must have rounded them up and put them up temporarily until someone got home. I moved them back to where they need to be and tell Sister to help with the chores. I'll do the heavy lifting with the feeding if she just fills water tubs. Next morning, I go out to do morning chores and discover that the hose is frozen solid and not a drop of water will come through it. I finish what work I can and drag the hose to the basement and let it thaw out. When she gets up, I ask my sister if she drained the hose last night. She said she put it over the barn rafter like she's seen my dad and I do. Wasn't that enough? Well, surprise, if you don't continue to drain the water out of the rest of the hose by pulling it over the rafter, all the way to the end of its 100+ feet in its entirety, then the water will freeze, given that it's January in the Midwest, and render the hose useless until it thaws. I'll tell her the hose is in the basement, it should be thawed in about an hour, and then to fill the water tubs, as I can't because I'm heading back to my dorm. She immediately gets upset, saying that she is seeing her boyfriend today, and why don't I just stay and do the watering when the hose thaws. She also throws in an attempt to make me the bad guy by saying that there was stuff she wanted to do today, implying that I was being selfish by leaving and taking away her important time. Being now that I'm 20 and not 10, I said that I'm leaving, and if that's the case, she could tell Dad why the animals don't have water. Since there was no call from my dad later that day, I assumed she did the watering. My sister moves to New York City, and I get no contact more or less because I stayed in the Midwest state and happy and content with my rural life. I study martial arts, flounder with what I want to do for work, but end up in my building trade as mentioned. The only contact from my sister is the occasional drunk dial text that I tend to ignore. But this is when a new and now current dynamic starts. Not being in the position to order me to do stuff or steal or break my things with the physical space between us, she starts messaging me, and to my shock, we actually start having grown-up civil discussions. Is she wanting to reconnect? Does she now want a relationship with me now that we've both had some time to grow up? No. Now her thing is to be civil and act like a grown-up around me in private, but the instant we are around other people, it's the same old song and dance again. Everyone must know that she is better, smarter, and prettier than me. How classy. Most recent examples, when I got married, she said she wanted to help, having event coordinator experience, which basically meant she showed us how they made guest lists in New York, and we told her what the speculative date of the wedding was, but we hadn't talked about the venue yet. When she returns to New York, I don't hear much from her other than she wants to wear a big flower crown like mine for the ceremony. When I shut this down, she has a full meltdown about how she's not part of my bridesmaids and how I'm not making her feel included. She only wanted this one thing and how she is my sister, and that should count for something. I told her that she didn't have to come if she didn't want to. The subject passed and I went back to my planning. Getting closer to the event, Sister got her invitation and called me asking to move the ceremony back an hour because she was doing an event that day too. It was my fault, of course, because we had to move the tentative date we told her about 6 months prior because of a scheduling conflict with the venue. If I moved the ceremony back an hour, she wouldn't have time to do her event and then come to the wedding. Mustering my mouth back from where it had fallen open, I told her once again that she could either come or not at all. I was not moving the ceremony back an hour after I had already sent out all the invitations. Wedding day, very fortunately, goes off without a hitch, thanks in no small part to my awesome bridal party. Again, years pass, I'm happily married, and we go house hunting. We find a bit of property in a house through luck, that is, nepotism, and a friend of my father-in-law's wanted to sell his place, so he sold it to us for pretty cheap and gave us all the time we needed to get our down payment. That's pretty cool. But now we come to the shit stopper of an event that just made me go, what the fuck is your problem? Christmas. Family dinner. Sister tells me she's flying in. Again, we have a nice conversation, and me and my naivete bought into it and began talking with her. My hope rises, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing her. But then the inevitable shitstorm happens. We're in front of people again, so everyone must know that she is better than me. A few examples, and this is in front of everyone who is there. Table setting and food is being placed. Sister calls me to follow her because I can be useful, quote-unquote. Wow. I show Dad a picture of the property we're buying so he can look it over with his farmer's eye. Sister declares that we're having Christmas at my house next year and proceeds to tell me what I am to cook for dinner, all of her favorites, of course. I told her she wouldn't like being at our place as we're planning to farm and she would have to help with everything from baking to butchery. Husband and I are the crazy mountain types with a keen interest in self-sufficiency. Sister started to go on a very righteous speech about how she could indeed do all that because we had the same upbringing. And that's when I replied, "Really? And you still don't know how to drain a hose in January?" That seemed to shut her up for the rest of the meal. We get our gifts, and one of mine is Ball's canning book with different recipes. As I'm thumbing through it, Sister points at something and tells me that I'm going to make that for her. And finally, while sitting on the couch, she grabs my hand and puts it on her head, telling me to rub her head. What? Before I lose my shit, Dad intervenes, rubbing her head and letting me go get a large drink. Is this a thing people do? I'm confused. After that Christmas, I went truly minimal contact. So when I found out I was pregnant, I only told my dad, and he did not pass that on to my sisters. We both knew she would tell my mom, who I was not ready to tell yet. As a sidebar, I was thrilled when I found out that we were having a boy because I would not have to listen to my sister drone on about raising a girl to be a, quote, good feminist, and that her first words were going to be, quote, fuck the patriarchy. Okay. I'm a feminist myself. My sister's brand, however, it worries me. All about microaggressions and manspreading, and doesn't want to hear me tell stories of how I love my highly male-dominated construction work and have only really run into 2 true assholes on job sites. And this is not trim work that I do. I build concrete forms for industrial building and power plants. That's pretty wicked. It's rough, hard work in all weathers, and I personally find that when it comes to the jobs I like, most of the men there don't really give a shit that I'm a female. They care if I can do my job. Sister thinks I must be brainwashed or a, quote, bad feminist to not see that I'm thinking like an oppressed mouse. But I digress. Back to the story. I also kept my mom and sister in the dark on the day our son was born because the doctor decided to induce me early, due to a complication. It took me 3 days and a week in the hospital for him to finally be born. Again, Dad was the only one to know and did not pass this information along because the last thing I needed was my mom or my sister trying to storm the doors in the maternity ward while I was in labor or at least blowing up my phone. So far, in the last few months, she's only asked me to send her a picture of our baby once, and I'm very happy with that. She can stay in New York. That's where today leaves me in this world of sibling rivalry, making me ask just what the fuck is up with this woman. But alas, I feel I shall never know for sure. I am, of course, just an immature, dumb, and ugly younger sibling that ruined her life, at least in public, that is. Thanks to everyone who comments, and thanks to Moonhorse if he reads this from the Moonscape Paddock. First off, I live in a space station, as if the background wasn't enough of a giveaway. But secondly, yeah, this is... wow. You know, there's a specific type of people we don't get to talk about a lot, because a lot of times when we talk about stuff, we talk about neckbeards, and that tends to go into the very, for lack of a better term, patriarchal-centered mindset. A lot of, like, you know, masculine men being masculine men, which, of course, is something I don't understand, even though I do identify as a man. I'm not straight, and I have never understood the heteros. It's not a thing for me. Sorry. I love you all very much. I do not understand the constant male posturing. I don't get it. But, with that being said, I'm also very aware of the opposite end of this, the hyper-focused feminist who pick little tiny things in order to be mad about. See, there's a specific type of person which I've run into multiple times, and a lot of different people I know have said it. They're just people who like to be offended. The kind of incels who find every slight against them, that if a woman so much as breathes the wrong way, oh, she must be oppressing them. And the type of hyper-focused feminist who does the exact same thing. They just enjoy being offended. Like, they just have a thing about it. They need to feel this victim complex. And honestly, OP, your sister kind of sounds like she's getting into that mentality. It's very much the need for victim complex. It's the need for attention, the need for everyone to just kind of, you know, specifically play up to her, and that she has to be the center of attention. The reason I think she has such problems with you, not all of the problem, obviously, I'm just kind of, you know, generalizing. But the reason I can see a lot of this argument going back and forth with you is because you don't play into that. she expects playing into that. She expects some sort of back and forth between the two of you about how you're supposed to, I don't know, resist her so she can continue to play the victim, but you don't. You just shut that shit down immediately and then go on about your life. And honestly, that's probably the best way to handle it. I hate to say that, mainly because we are talking about siblings and stuff like that, but really when it comes to that kind of stuff, dealing with pure negativity and feeding into pure negativity is not the way to answer, you know, any of that. That's not a healthy way to look into it. It's not your fault, you know, that she's decided to do this, and it's really unfair to you that she continues on this path to continually talk about how you're supposedly so horrible and so awful, when all you're doing is just living your own life and enjoying what life you have. Like, I don't really see why anything you do should be so horrible to her. It really just kind of feels like she needs to grow up. And sadly, sometimes that just doesn't happen. Sometimes your siblings have decided they're just not going to grow up, or other family members for that matter. I've heard so many stories about people who are related to someone who basically just has never gotten out of high school. Granted, now they're like 30, but they still haven't gotten out of high school. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, there's a lot of that. And that's where I think a lot of this hyper-focused victim mentality stuff also comes from. This need to be oppressed. This need to be, you know, oh, these persons are so mean to me. Well, that kind of discredits the people who are actually dealing with shit like this. So that's kind of fucked up. That, I cannot stand that, because that kind of thing is what negative people, when it comes to, specifically, we're going back to feminist issues here. I know, on my channel, whoa. It really discredits actual hard-working feminists who are trying to work for equality and all this other stuff by creating these fucking horrible little straw people that are just like, every little tiny thing offends me. And, I got on the bus one time and someone looked at me the wrong way. And now I'm upset for the rest of the day. And it's like, dude, life is hard. Get a fucking helmet. I know. And yes, we are working towards making things a lot better, but the key point of that is working towards. It's not there yet, and you're gonna have to get stronger. Like, that's all there is to it. Like, if you're not willing to slug it out and make this shit happen, get the fuck out of the way. And yeah, that's the bottom line for that too. That's how I kind of feel about it. And I don't dig on all this microaggression shit. There may be a thing about that in certain ways, but for the most part, anytime I hear somebody use it, they're usually chatting nonsense, so... But I could be wrong, you know? I've never been the kind of person who says I'm an authority on anything. And honestly, if you're taking your authoritative advice on gender studies and, gender and sex and all these things from a talking cartoon unicorn who lives on the moon and reads stories about neckbeards, why do you think I'm an authority on these things? Just asking. So, with all that being said, this is the end of this video. I know, right? Either way, like, comment, subscribe. If you would like to like, comment, and subscribe, do all of those things. Unless you're already subscribed. Don't subscribe a second time. That'll unsubscribe you, and that would suck. For me, too. I wouldn't like that. You're my family. I want you to stay. Anyway, I also have a Ko-Fi, which you can donate to, because it keeps the lights on in here, and a merch store, which you can buy stuff from, because it's like donating to Ko-Fi, except you get, like, a t-shirt, or a mask, or, a shower curtain. That's real, by the way. I sell Moonhorse shower curtains. Threadless said I could do these things, and I'm not gonna question that. I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna keep doing the insane shit that I always do. I know, right? Anyway, if you have a story you'd like to send me, r/Moonhorse Stories. That's my subreddit. I'll check it. And there's a live stream every Saturday. It's kind of like this, except that I'm actually talking directly to you and reading just the craziest shit on the internet that I can find. So, with all that being said, I love you all so very, very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.